Hi and welcome to this Succeed with Dyslexia webinar. I'm so pleased to be able to invite Georgina Durrant on with us today so that we can chat about SEN resources. Hi Georgina, how are you?
I am really good, thank you.
Superb. I've got lots of lovely things to say about you. So, so Georgina's the CEO of Cheshire SEN Tutor Limited, and she's the owner of the website, the SEN Resources blog. She provides tutoring service for children with SEN, and she writes articles and blogs on SEN topics, and she also keeps a very watchful eye on SEN education news, which I know because I very often pop in to see exactly how she's thinking about what's going on in the media. She's a great resource. On her that's okay. On her website, you'll find lots of super helpful resources and recommendations, great signposting, and links to her national and local press articles. She's a very busy bee, always writing. And today she's going to be sharing her thoughts on how to ignite a love of reading for children with reading difficulties. Well, this is a topic that's really close to our heart here at Succeed with Dyslexia. So we're really stoked to have you and to listen to your presentation today and get some fantastic ideas that I know you're going to be sharing with us.
Oh, thank you very much.
Hey, you're welcome. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you center stage and I'm going to make sure that your presentation pops up as well. So let's do that.
Fabulous.
Click of two buttons, I shall have succeeded. Okay, so away you go. Brilliant.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm going to talk about how to ignite a love of reading for children with reading difficulties, which, as Julia says, is a topic that a lot of people are interested in, something that people really want their children to love reading despite them having a reading difficulty. So what I would like to cover is I'm going to go through my background and why I started the SEN Resources blog. This question of can everybody love reading, there's no surprise that my answer is going to be yes, and I'll explain why I think it's yes and how we can do that. I'm very aware the problems that parents and teachers face looking for resources for children with reading difficulties. So I'm going to go through some of those problems with you and then try and problem solve a little bit and think about how you can find a suitable resource, what sort of things you need to look for, and how to measure its success, because it's all very well and good finding these resources, but we need to work out how to measure if they've actually worked and how they're making an impact on that child. And then I'll overview and go through what I've gone through so far. So firstly, about me, I'm Georgina Durrant. I'm a former teacher and a former SENCO, and I am the founder of the SEN Resources blog, which is an award-winning, apparently, website for parents and teachers of children with special educational needs, and it shares sort of advice and learning activities and recommendations of resources. I'm also a tutor, so I'm a private tutor for children with special educational needs. I set up my own tutoring service called Cheshire SEN Tutor, which is now predominantly online due to the pandemic, and I'll talk about that probably later. And I'm also an author. My first book is coming out in June called 100 Ways Your Child Can Learn Through Play. So I'm a big fan of play-based learning, making learning fun for children, and that hopefully will be reflected in what I talk about as well. So firstly, the SEN Resources blog, I've put the website address on there if anyone wanted to look at it, but basically it's a website full of activities for children, advice, reviews and recommendations and learning videos. So there's activities to help with things such as fine motor skills, gross motor skills, there's crafts, there's activities to help with speech and language difficulties, etc. I also write bits of advice, things that I think might be helpful. There's one topic, one on today that I think Julia mentioned that's been in the news about reading difficulties. No, not about reading difficulties, sorry, about speech and language difficulties. And I've written some advice about how we can help our children develop that. I also review quite a lot of resources, so hopefully that can be helpful. So there's a lot of resources on there that I recommend that might help children with special educational needs. And I've got some play-based learning activity videos too, which I think are really fun. I have a YouTube channel of activities that you can watch. I think there's about 38 videos now that are recorded during the pandemic, during lockdown for kids. So you can see a couple of them on the screen. There's one where you can how to make a lava lamp, and there's another one doing some phonics with some Duplo. So there's all sorts of stuff on my website, and I'd love you to go and have a look if you get a chance. Why did I start it? So I started it basically to share activities. I had lots of people asking me as a tutor, oh, what can I do to help my child with reading difficulties? Or do you have anything that you know of that will help with fine motor skills? And I thought, wouldn't it be good if I just put them all in one place? And then I could be like, oh, have a look at this. So it's share activities, provide advice, and help parents and teachers find useful resources to help children with special educational needs. And this sort of leads on to why I'm speaking today. So hopefully I can provide a little bit of advice on how to find resources for children with reading difficulties such as dyslexia. So the first question I said I'd go through was, can everyone love reading? And I strongly, strongly believe that our answer must be yes. I absolutely love this little verse by Julia Donaldson, and I hope you don't mind me reading it to you. But it says, I opened a book and in I strode. Now nobody can find me. I've left my chair, my house, my road, my town and my world behind me. I'm wearing the cloak, I've slipped on the ring, I've swallowed the magic potion. I fought with a dragon, dined with a king, and dived in a bottomless ocean. I opened a book and made some friends. I shared their tears and laughter, and followed their road with its bumps and bends to the happily ever after. I finished my book and out I came. The cloak can no longer hide me. My chair and my house are just the same, but I have a book inside me. And the reason I wanted to share that is we want all children to be able to experience this. When you read a book, and I remember it as a kid reading Harry Potter, and when I was sort of a teenager reading those, and I think when you can escape into a book and have those experiences, and it's just something that we need all children to be able to have. It's such a wonderful feeling, and I think we need to really, really try and make sure that all children can love reading. And it's not just benefits of this, there's huge academic benefits, as we're all aware, of being able to read successfully, such as increasing your vocabulary, your written work improves, easier to access the schoolwork and answer exam questions, for example. But it also can develop imagination and creativity. It can broaden your understanding of the world and other people. And if you're enjoying it, it can reduce stress, and it can be a lovely thing to do before bedtime. So I really, really think it's important that we strive for all children being able to love reading. And as I'll go into the next slide, it's our job as parents and teachers to break down these barriers to reading, to enable it to be fun. And I reckon good quality resources can help with this. So I'm going to show you what I think we can do. So problems, you probably all faced these when you look for resources. If you Google resources for reading difficulties, you get so many things that flash up that tell you this is the best thing, no, this is the best thing. And you think, oh my goodness, how will I know what's actually going to work for this child? There's no way of knowing. There's too many resources. It's not that there aren't any, there's just too many. And some of them are brilliant and some of them are rubbish. And I think that's the difficulty when we're looking for them. So there's too many resources. Where do you actually look? Which websites can you trust? How do you know they're going to be any good for your child? And how do you know they're going to work? And I want to sort of help with this a little bit. So first of all, my biggest advice, and I know it sounds really obvious, but sometimes someone needs to say it for it just to click, is think about the child. So don't think, oh, I've got a child in my class or my child at home has reading difficulties, so I need to find a book for that. Step back and actually think, okay, no, this is a child who enjoys dinosaurs. They enjoy learning about the world, or they like mini beasts, whatever they enjoy. Think about that child and what they would like to read, because there's no point giving them a book about something they're not interested in, even if they're capable of reading it, because they're not going to read it. Or even if they do read it, they're not going to enjoy it, and you're not going to ignite a love of reading. So we need to think about the child first and foremost. Then I'd look for some reviews, and I think slide my website in here. You can look on websites like mine, for example, but also other websites that review them. There's lots of book bloggers out there, so blogs that review picture books and chapter books. So have a read through some of these reviews and see what other people have said about them. And the Amazon reviews, if you're looking on there, or other bookshop reviews, they're always really, really helpful. Ask for recommendations. And I think it's all right saying that sometimes, like, oh, who are you going to ask? What I would say is, if you're a parent, I'd speak to your teachers and ask them what books in school are actually working for your child, or a child that is similar to your child, and see what they would recommend, because they've spent a long time teaching perhaps, so they might have some brilliant suggestions. And the other way around, if you're the teacher and it's not working reading in school, that the child that you're teaching isn't enjoying reading, speak to the parents, ask them what do they read at home, what do they enjoy, what are they looking at? Is it a Beano magazine? Is it, I don't know, a book about tractors? What is igniting their love of reading, and sort of tap into there. And there's also, I've put online, I don't, not just random as online, but there's such a wealth now of Facebook groups that have brilliant suggestions from people of resources. There's also on Twitter, social media, I think obviously there's some bad sides to it, but there's also some really good sides to social media in terms of parents being able to recommend resources to each other and teachers being able to recommend resources to each other. So do a little bit of research. Also ask a librarian. Now that I think libraries are back open, aren't they? Ask a librarian, they're really, really good. Use your local libraries. And trial and error, which again leads me on to the library part. It's really important, I think, just to try these books out. And if it doesn't work, that's okay. And that's where the libraries can come in really useful, because then you haven't spent lots of money on books, because you could just take it back. And I think it's taking these risks and saying, would this book work for them? Okay, it didn't, that doesn't matter, we'll try something else. And not feeling defeatist, keep trying, because there will be something for them. There'll be something they'll like eventually, and you'll find it. It's just having that confidence. This bit's a really, really important bit, is looking not just at their reading age, but their interest age as well, and thinking about books that will be suitable for them. So you can look at a child's reading age and think, right, I'll find a book that's suitable for what they're able to read, but it may well be too babyish for them. And yes, they can read it, wonderful, you've got them reading, but that's not going to ignite a love of reading. That's just going to put them off. And yes, they might have some success in feeling great that they can read the words, but you need to look. There's some books now that have both. They're suitable for their reading age and they're suitable for their interest age. And I think looking for those resources is vital. So finding a book that is suitable for their reading age, but also has like a higher interest age, so it's suitable for that age, for their age group, chronologically as well. So not giving, a 12-year-old boy a really babyish book that they're not going to enjoy, but finding one that's on a topic that they're interested in, is the age range of their interest, but also their reading age. I think that's key. Does it have to be a fiction book? No, I don't think so. You can disagree with me on this one, but I think as long as they are reading, we're igniting a love of reading. Fiction books are wonderful for the escapism part, but there will be children that don't, and just as there are grown-ups that won't enjoy a fiction book, and that's okay. Get them reading other things. Right, so I was going to go through some of the different types of books and what to look for each of them. So this slide's all about what to look for picture books and board books, and in particular for children with reading difficulties. And I think there's so many wonderful books out there. Interactive books are fantastic because it just feels like you're playing. It doesn't feel, there isn't the focus on the reading. So I would personally, unless the child doesn't like it, I would choose a book that's interactive, that maybe they can lift the flaps, that they can, like this one on the screen here, this one, you open the page and then you're one of the characters that pulls out of the book and you can move it through so you can act out the story. So that was a really fun one. It didn't really feel like we were reading a book when we were looking at that book together. In the top corner, I've got some sensory books as well for some children that can be really relaxing. It can take the pressure off when they're reading, and they're just quite fun to play with, aren't they? So you can touch little bits and feel the different textures. So maybe a sensory book might be an idea. What else have I put? Fun. Sounds ridiculous. Make sure the book's fun. Make sure they're going to enjoy it. The story's good. Interesting to the child. So again, stepping back, thinking about that child. What do they actually enjoy? Are they going to be interested in the topic? And age appropriate, like I said, so making sure that it's not too babyish for them. They're not going to feel feel silly reading it. They're going to want to read it and yeah, feel pleased with themselves when they manage to. And for younger children, I really think I'm a bit, like I said, I'm a big fan of learning through play. My book's about it. My blog is all about learning through play, and how I tutor is as well. But reading, it doesn't have to be just sat with a book. You can do it as part of play. So this picture, and I was telling Julia about this earlier, this picture of this gingerbread man on the screen, I did with a child this week. So instead of just getting them to read this phonics book on the gingerbread man, we baked gingerbread as well, and then we acted out the whole story. You might think I'm ridiculous, but it was very fun. We acted out the whole story with the gingerbread man, to the point where she was the fox at the end. She got to balance the gingerbread man on her nose right at the end, and then she got to eat the gingerbread man when the fox in the story ate the gingerbread man. And I'm not sure she thought she was reading the book at all. I think it was all about play, a little bit about eating a gingerbread man, but just really fun. The pressure wasn't there. She was enjoying playing, and we got some really good reading done. So I think we need to step into the world of children, especially young children, and think they learn through play. How can reading be part of play, and how can we make it less stressful, more relaxing, and more part of their world? So another example would be, say you're playing with some trains. You could, if they've got their trains set up like this, you could have a couple of books out about maybe a non-fiction about trains. You could have, Thomas the Tank Engine storybook as well. And you could maybe read pages of those in between playing and just dip in and out of it. It doesn't have to be reading the whole book in one go, and getting them to read certain words in there, you reading a little bit with them, and just doing little and often, and realising that it doesn't have to be them sat there reading a book every time. It can be something playful, it can be something fun, and it can be a bit more on their terms as well. And this is a lovely resource that I found. It's actually on my blog again. But I just wanted to show you that there's so many books now that embrace this sort of playfulness. This one, there's a whole series of them. I've got another one I can show you in a minute, but this one's an airport one. And basically you open up the pages, if you can see in the bottom corner there, you open up the pages and you can fold out the actual airport and then pop out the plane, make the plane up, read the story about the airport, and then you can sort of fly your aeroplane onto the runway and act it all out. And again, I'm not sure children, when they're reading that, are realising that they're reading a book. I think, well, obviously they know a little bit, but they're more realising that they're playing. It's just fun, isn't it? And anything that can get children thinking that books are wonderful is a good thing. So yeah, I really love these ones. Right, chapter books. I get asked this a lot, like which chapter books would I recommend? Because children get to a certain age and other children are reading chapter books. They don't want to be reading a picture book, understandably, if everybody else in their class is reading a chapter book. And I think it's really important that we find chapter books that are suitable for them, so they can feel included, feel like they're friends, but also access them. So what I would look for, I love this book that's on the screen. There's a whole series of them called Tales from the Pitch, and they're dyslexia friendly. So look for dyslexia friendly font, the colour of the paper as well. So sometimes they have like sort of beigey coloured paper, and that can be a bit helpful for some children, not all, but some. More pictures inside. So again, having a look through, a lot of the sort of like comic style ones have more pictures inside, so they can be really useful. Short snappy paragraphs in there as well, so that they're not having to read a long piece of text, because that can be daunting. So little paragraphs split up by pictures works really well. And ones that are fun to read, make sure they're actually interested in it and it's going to be enjoyable for them. So again, going back to that interest age and reading level, I think it's really, really important. Does it have to be books? It's interesting, isn't it? I don't think it does. It can be comics. There's still text in there. That's classed as reading in my book. It could be a recipe book if they're really into baking. If you're getting them to read the recipes, that's fine. It could be a magazine. And there's so many different options that it can be. And I think stepping away from our preconceived ideas of what you want the child to be doing, and just thinking actually the aim here is to get them to read and to enjoy reading. So does it matter what they read? Well, as long as it's as long as it's suitable, then not really. The other one was putting the subtitles on the TV, so helping children get used to words being around. It's not for everybody, but for some children, having the subtitles on TV can help aid their reading. Audiobooks. Now, this is the funny one, you might disagree with me on this, but I think audiobooks are quite a good idea. Not instead of books, I'm saying as well as, because if our goal is to ignite a love of reading, our audiobooks, they could be sort of a way in to show children that escapism from in a book, and maybe use that before introducing more books. So you could have, I don't know, listen to an audiobook of Harry Potter, and I used the example earlier, and they could then be transformed to Hogwarts and loving all the magical worlds that they see. And from that, they might think, oh my goodness, books are brilliant. So it could ignite a love of reading. Not instead of books, but as well as books. I think audiobooks can be fantastic. And what other resources can help? So I've got a blog post on my website that you can have a look through and read, but this is part of it. I've put on there visual tracking reading windows. They're quite useful for some children. The reader pens. And then for visual stress problems that can occur alongside dyslexia, so not for all children with dyslexia, but for some children these can be useful. So things like coloured overlays, it's worth trying to see if they work. There's nothing lost by seeing if it makes a difference. You can get different size ones as well now, so you can get ones that fit on a small book, or you can get the A4 ones, so it might be worth having a look to see if you can find some of those. You can get monitor coloured overlays, so you can get them to fit over the computer screen when they're reading things on there. And you can also change the background colour, can't you, on the computer and your Kindle preferences or the iPad or whatever, so that when they're reading on those, if they were, it makes it more accessible for them as well. I think key as well is to adapt. Like I said, we need to step away from sort of our preconceived ideas of how we imagined our children to be reading, and adapt to them and think about them. It's about them. Think about what they're interested in, how we can make it easier for them, what things we need to put in place, and be a good role model for them as well. I saw a wonderful picture a while ago, and I wanted to find it to put on here, but I couldn't find it. And it showed, you've probably seen it, but it showed some people on a tube, and there was, or the underground, and there was a dad with his daughter, I think, sat on the knee, and they're both reading books. And then it showed another picture of a child on like an iPad, and the parents just glued to their phone. And it was saying about the way to encourage children to read books is to be a good role model. Now, I appreciate, you can read all the books as a parent, you could read all the books in front of them that you wanted to, but if they've got reading difficulties, it might not help. But it does provide them with a good role model, and I think it's important to show children that we enjoy books, that books are useful for us, that side of things too. So read books in front of them. So I've got some pictures there to show you. But yeah, I think it's really important that children see parents reading. It's not just a chore that they have to do after school to do their reading book, to fill in their reading diary for school. It's an enjoyable activity that we want to do. And I think that needs to be shown to children, and not just told to children. They need to see us reading. They need to see on holiday, perhaps, as sat with a book. They need to see on our downtime, instead of watching the TV, sometimes we're sat reading a book. That side, or maybe looking for information as well. I think that's key. If we can't find the answer to something, not always jumping to Google, but maybe just sometimes getting a book out and saying, oh look, we could look in this encyclopedia and find something here. So I would do that. And how do you know if the resource worked? Okay, so you followed all of this, you found this amazing resource that you think is this brilliant book that you think is going to help your child. How do you know if it works? Well, it might sound stupid, but ask them and observe them. I think it's really important to look at them. Are they actually enjoying the book when they're reading it? So our aim is to ignite a love of reading. So we want them to not just be able to read the book, but love reading. So check they're enjoying it. Are they asking for more books? Are they dragging you to the library? See if it's working, what you're doing. Are they talking about books? Now, I love this one. I love when you hear children sort of quoting or just chatting about a new word that they've heard in a book. And you can notice if they've enjoyed a book by if it's on their mind often at bedtime, they'll start chatting about things that they've heard in a book. So yeah, I think that's a really good insight, especially for young children. And are they less reluctant to read to you? So if it's getting easier, you could even write this down as like a little, little diary, and see if it's getting easier to read with them. Are they actually enjoying it? They're less reluctant. And then obviously it's working. But sometimes things will work for a little while and then they won't. And you can change, and you've got to adapt. It doesn't matter, don't get stuck in, well, I've chosen this book, it's going to be the one, this that will sort it. Just keep adapting, keep changing with them, with their age, with their interests, with what their friends are reading. All of these different factors, keep factoring them in yourself. So I think I've just about done 50 minutes. My overview. So I'm Georgina. I run the Sen Resources blog, and you can find the website is on there. And there's social media, or you can Google me as well. So I'm on Twitter and Instagram and all of those. And yeah, I think it's our job as parents and teachers to sort of ensure that we help our children love reading. When you're looking for resources, I think it's really key to look for reviews, recommendations, trial and error, try them out, see if they work. And then for picture books in particular, I remember I said looking for things that are playful, look for sensory books, ones that are short, ones that children can be part of, and lots of pictures. And chapter books, it needs to be interesting for their age. Think about the dyslexia friendly font, pictures, paragraphs being shorter, snappy. I've put about other resources, so there was a few various different ones on there. If you're looking for them, if you head over to my website, there's a blog post near the top that says about dyslexia resources, so you can find some of them on there. And remembering that it doesn't have to be fiction books, it can be non-fiction books, it can be a catalogue, it can be a magazine, it can be anything. And to find out if it works, ask the child, observe them, and see if they're less reluctant to read. I hope that's okay.
Perfect, thank you. I'm really delighted with your presentation, because you've given us a cornucopia of strategies. There you go, lots and lots of. It's wonderful. Well, I've got a few questions, and we've got some questions from the Facebook live feed as well. So yeah, get your thinking cap on, because I'm going to throw some thoughts at you.
No pressure.
No, not at all. But before we do that, I just want to come back and unpick some of the points you've made, and have a reflective experience about them as well as a teacher and a Senko also. And as you were talking about the books with the lift the flaps, and you showed a picture of an aeroplane, and just being able to engage with that flat, and then pick up a little model aeroplane and then fly it across and have the conversation about it. I can tell you those were the books that worked when I was teaching at a primary PRU. And so the children there were between the ages of 5 and 11, and had been excluded from primary schools, mainly for behaviour, and many of them had undiagnosed dyslexia and a range of other kind of neurodiverse challenges. Okay. And it wasn't always just the behaviour for those young people. It was like lots of things that were really difficult to manage for teachers in mainstream. But what I will say is they absolutely adored the things that you are talking about, which was the sensory books. The younger ones loved the Crunch and Crinkle and the sock puppet one, where you could really get involved and make the character talk. Or the other thing that was really successful for those very disengaged readers was a set of puppets. You could have we had bags and bags of wonderful books, like the Three Pigs, and you'd have the piggies, and you'd have the wolf. And I will never forget us sitting round with the children and them taking one of the puppet characters, and one of the fiercest children in the class taking the role of the wolf and saying, "I'll huff and I'll puff, I'll blow your house down." And his level of enjoyment and reading it
Yeah.
blew me away, because he wanted to be a different kind of wolf. He wanted to interpret that in a completely different way and get involved with the story, and it was just wonderful to see a love of that story emerging.
Absolutely. I think it's sort of, it steps them away from the pressure of books, isn't it? They don't see it as this chore. I hate it when children are like, oh, I've got to do my reading after school, and it's trying to step them away from that and actually realize books are wonderful. They can be so much fun. And I think, like you say, when you're doing acting it out and doing sort of activities with them, then they forget that it's a book, they forget the reading, and it just becomes a playful, doesn't it? It becomes a game.
That's it. And if you can create an environment where children don't know they're learning, you're really winning. You really are winning. And so I just wanted to say that I think all of the strategies, I have seen them working. I've seen them working with the most disengaged children. They certainly do work. And the other thing that you said that really resonated with me was about look for the hook. You cannot expect somebody to enjoy a book on ballerinas because you do, or because you like the pictures, or whatever it might be. You have to look for their hook.
Yeah.
And that's important too.
Yeah,
And
I
it's
think choose it as well. Sorry, one thing I hadn't said was actually taking them with you to choose the book as well, and actually listening to their point of view, because, you know, taking them to the library or a bookshop, they're now open, and getting them to actually pick the books themselves gives them quite a lot of power, doesn't it? It sort of empowers children if they've chosen that book and they've been able to buy it, with, even if maybe they've saved up for it, even it can, I don't know, it can give children a lot of power, make them feel a lot more important and value that book a lot more.
I completely agree with you. And another thing that you said so many things. I went, yes, absolutely. That works. I know that works. Was just about the getting the interest age right and the reading level right. Yeah. Particularly with those primary PRU learners who I mentioned earlier. If they thought they were going to be reading a book that was not age appropriate, they would rather not read. Absolutely. And yet they needed that level of support.
And that's the thing. When I was a Senko, that was the hardest thing we had, was trying to convince these children to read when they didn't want to read the books that we had for them. And completely understandable. You know, they're in year 7 or year 8 and they want to be cool, they're sat with their friends and they don't want to be seen to be reading a babyish book. And why would we make them do that? It's not going to make them want to love reading. It's just going to put them off for life. We need to think about books that are suitable for them, both in terms of the interest and the reading level. And I think and it's good that there's lots of companies now out there that are providing books like this.
And you're signposting them on your website, which is really helpful, because it is hard to know what to look for first and what will work. So yes, please do visit the website, because there are some fantastic suggestions there and you'll find great range of books. So wonderful stuff. Let's have a look at some of the questions that have come through to us. Really great. Thank you for engaging with the conversation, everybody. It's lovely when you're asking questions and telling us. So we've had some nice comments along the way, which I'll read. So Christopher says, my dyslexia got 1,000 times better when I left school. I can read perfect, love to read, but writing and spelling still non-existent. This is one of the things, isn't it? Dyslexia is so tricksy. It's difficult and different for lots of different people in their experience, but I am so glad that you are loving reading. That's wonderful. We've got a question from Delano, which is, what are suggestions of books for boys? My twins enjoyed sport-themed books. What suggestions have you got?
So I've got a pile of books next to me, would you believe? I might even be able to hold one up. Yeah, let me show you. I think I did show you one of these, but these ones, Tales from the Pit, I think they're absolutely brilliant. The dyslexia friendly font, and it's sort of beige sort of pages. But yeah, what's this? Harry Connick's, is it? On there, but they're on my blog. You can see them, but I think they're absolutely brilliant for any children that are into sports. And yeah, very, very interesting and very good. And there's a whole series which I think as a parent, I appreciate this as well. If you find one book that your children love, you want a whole series of them, because then you can keep on going. You know, you've not just found one and then that's it. And there's loads of them, and they're all different footballers, and they basically just go through these footballers' lives and tell you all about them. So they're quite a cool book for kids as well to read, I think. I like that one.
And the Treehouse series, that's another one that's come to my attention recently, which I think is great, because they start with small little bite-sized bits of text, more pictures. The stories are funny and accessible, but as the series goes on, it becomes a little bit more text heavy, and you feel like it's a little bit more meaty as you go. And that's the kind of progression that you're looking for, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a really good idea.
So another question, or a theme that you covered in your webinar, was about parental engagement and parental modelling. So I'm thinking about reflective perspective. And I remember teaching and parents' evening, and parents would very often say to me at parents' evening in front of son or daughter, well, I'm not very good at reading, and yeah, we don't do a lot of reading. And those young people often were also disaffected about reading. And I thought you made a really important point about modelling.
Yeah.
And we need to take that responsibility as parents, even if we've struggled.
Absolutely, yeah.
To be a positive role model. What would you say about that?
And I think it is hard, isn't it, especially if you find reading difficult yourself, to spend time reading to show your children. But even if it's it doesn't have to, again, for parents, it doesn't have to be a book. It can be anything, but just showing children that books are useful to us, we can benefit from them, and they're not just given to us as a chore to do before bedtime to read, is really, really valuable. If it's, reading a magazine in front of them, or just sitting and chilling with a cup of tea and reading a book, or looking at the TV guide, anything, just show them the power of words, and show them that you can read and it's useful to read, I think is really important.
Yeah, there are so many things we can do as parents that even if it is just fun with words. You mentioned like the joy of finding a new word and unpicking it, or making it roll round your tongue, or find ways to make that word rhyme with something. And all of these are lovely, simple games that you can play that really do help with that love of reading. And the poem that you read out by I've forgotten her first name, Donaldson. Julia, same name as me, I should have remembered. Julia Donaldson. Don't know where that went. Anyway, the thing about Julia Donaldson's writing, and also when you are looking at these Harry McClary type books where you've got the rhyming couplets, they make you feel secure, because once you've found that word pattern, once you found that rhyme pattern, the next bit of reading, you're already clued up, you're already nearly finding the words.
Next line is going to sound like, don't you? So if you're thinking of your phonics and you're stressing about that word, you know the sort of ending it's going to have, so it helps you, doesn't it? I think I wrote sorry if I'm plugging my blog too much, but I wrote a blog post the other week about poetry for children and the importance of that, and how it can really, really help with vocabulary and reading and all of this sort of thing. And I think we forget, don't we, that there's a reason we were taught nursery rhymes as children. All of this is so important. And I think with YouTube and all of these things that children watch, this rubbish that they find, we forget the importance of these traditional nursery rhymes, and the value in poetry and that side of things for sort of phonics and for learning to read and all of this.
Yeah, and the oral tradition, I don't know if we're perhaps losing that out of our classrooms. I remember skipping games. Okay, I am going back to the 70s, right? But we skipping games were really important to us in the 70s, and we loved Ibble Obble, Wobble Wobble, the games we played with the rhyming and the jumping and in out and who's had a baby, and we won't play that anymore, shut the door, slam, and all of that was so joyful. And I do feel that we're kind of missing a trick with these old old games and old phrases, nursery rhymes, old style oral tradition stories, passing the stories along the family.
Yeah.
And if that's one thing I think we should be thinking about reviving, it's that.
Yeah, although I must admit some of the nursery rhymes do have bizarre stories, don't they, or some of the traditional tales, when you look back on them you're like, oh.
Very weird. Yeah.
Yes, there are some with strange stories when you look back on them.
But they stick. They absolutely stick in your memory. So even my mum will occasionally wander up to me and say, whip, whap, war'em, snip, snap, snore'em, because it was from a book that I absolutely loved when I was little, called Magic Pot, about a porridge making pot that wouldn't stop unless you had the magic words. And this chap didn't have the magic words, and it didn't matter what he said, the pot kept boiling over with porridge. Whip, whap, war'em, snip, snap, snore'em. And she put so much life and love into the telling of those stories that they're with me, you know, so many years later, and are a really joyful part of my childhood to look back on.
That's a really point about the way you read them as well, isn't it? I hadn't touched on that, and being enthusiastic yourself when you're reading books to your children or with your children, and making it silly and fun, and putting, because you remember as a child, you know, your parents reading books with silly voices, and it sticks. I think that's a really important point, Julia.
And not feeling embarrassed about it.
No, go with it.
Go with it. Have fun. Be joyful, and that's important.
It's enjoyable for us to be silly once in a while and have a bit of fun with a book.
I agree, absolutely. Well, a couple more questions and then we're going to wrap the session up. So let's just have a little bit of a chat about what you have been doing. So you've written a book, haven't you?
Thank you very much. Yes. It's called 100 Ways Your Child Can Learn Through Play. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of learning through play. So I don't know how I did it. I spent during the pandemic homeschooling and writing this book of 100 different activities that your children can do, whether it be like, so there's different chapters. There's some for activities you can do on a walk, there's activities you can do in the garden, activities for when your child has to sit still. So if you're, well, not so much at the moment, but we will be doing soon, things like sitting on a train or on an aeroplane. If you're sat there and you're thinking, oh gosh, I've got a 2-hour flight with a child, what on earth am I going to get them to do? There's activities you can do with very limited resources, like sat at a table. There's a chapter on sensory play, there's a chapter on imaginative play, and it's just loads of fun. I tried them all out and I've been told they're fun. So fun activities that children can do. And at the bottom of each of them, there's a little tick box and it tells you the different skills that your child will have developed or will have helped to develop during that activity. So the other way I hoped parents could use it is if they've been to their Senko and the Senko said, you need to help your child with their fine motor skills, and then think, oh, okay, brilliant. And then they get home and think, oh, what am I supposed to do to help them with the fine motor skills? Well, they can look at my book and you can flick through and find all the pages that have got the tick next to fine motor skills, and you could pick and choose various different activities that would help develop that skill. So sort of like a play recipe book. So, you know, you think, oh, today we're going to do this, and you pop it up on your desk and you have a look and you decide together what fun activities we're going to do. So it comes out on June the 21st, which is in time for the summer holidays and summer of play. So yes, buy it.
Okay. Yes. Where are we going to buy it from then?
It's everywhere. It's pre-orderable now. I'm not sure pre-orderable is a word, but I think it should.
We don't mind.
You can pre-order it from Amazon or Waterstones or WH Smith's, all of them. So if you or you can go on my website and find it. But yeah, if you Google 100 Ways Your Child Can Learn Through Play by Georgina Durrant, it should come up. So you can have a look at that.
Wonderful. And I would encourage you all to do that, because resources where there are clear directions about what they will support and help you with are worth their weight in gold, I can tell you.
How to sort of empower parents, because I know during the pandemic, as a mum myself, I know how guilty you feel when your children are just playing. There's a whole, you see all these Instagram mums doing all these amazing things, and you think, oh right, my child's just playing. And I wanted to get the idea that yes, they're playing, but through play they're actually learning this and this and this and this, and actually that's how they learn. They are learning whilst they are playing. You're not neglecting them. you're actually teaching them, and there's some really valuable learning going on there. And I just wanted parents to feel a bit more empowered, because I think a lot of us lost that during the pandemic and felt guilty.
We did. We felt guilty and exhausted. That's how we felt. And so important, I think, to combine our sensory experiences. So really lovely to hear stories about how you can combine a little bit of reading, a little bit of cookie making, a little bit of cookie eating, all of that sort of thing. Children will love you for that forever. They'll remember it forever. The multi-sensory, multimodal, involve music, involve sand painting. If it's a hot day, get some squirty water and squirt the water around to do your hot water writing that disappears in the sun. All of those things will create wonderful memories for you and your children, and really foster that love of learning and that love of reading that we are so keen to foster in our young people, so that they can also go into that wonderful world, into that wonderful book, and have it inside them.
Yes, I completely agree.
So Georgina, I am just going to scan through and make sure I haven't missed anybody's questions out, and then I'll draw it to a close. I can see we've got a question from Rowan. My daughter's 7 and has been diagnosed with dyslexia. She loves fairy stories and princess stories. Is there any that you could suggest for her, please?
Yes, there is. I can't remember the name of it, but it's on my blog. This isn't me just trying to send you over there after this. There's a brilliant one, and it's what's it called? It's like a comic version. I recommended it to somebody a couple of weeks ago, and it's got a fairy on the front and there's a griffin in it, and it's absolutely brilliant. So if you head over to my blog, you'll find it. And it's in the blog post. There's a blog post that says resources for children with reading difficulties such as dyslexia. So if you look in that one, there's a brilliant, you can find me on social media and I'll write about it this evening, but there's definitely a book on there about fairies, and it's a really, really wonderful book. And I recommended it to somebody that I tutor and they loved it. So yes.
Good stuff. That's fine. And just important to know that comic books are okay. Yeah. Non-fiction books are okay. Fiction books are okay. Go with what your child is telling you that they're enjoying, and don't feel guilty. Just facilitate as much as you can. Righto. Anything else? Any last thoughts from you? Pearls of wisdom before we go?
I think I'm done. I can't think of anything.
I think you've given us very good value. Thank you, Georgina. So many brilliant things for us to take away and think about. Well, we thank you very much. So everybody, this is going to bring our webinar to a close. We thank you for joining us. And hey, why not pop back to the Succeed with Dyslexia website? We have festivals. We have wonderful webinars with inspirational people. We talk about dyslexia all the time. Why not head over to the YouTube channel and have a look at our news, have a look at what's going on. We are very much in touch with the world of dyslexia, and we're happy to share all of that knowledge and information with you and bring you fantastic guests like Georgina. So thank you everybody very much. I'll put my teeth in before we go.
Thank you ever so much for listening, everybody who was on there as well.
Hey, you're welcome. Bye bye everybody. Thank you.